Welcome to the Schools of Excellence podcast, a place for insightful conversations about building sustainable schools of excellence. Join me each week as we explore the importance of leading with your values, creating impact, and leaving a lasting legacy. My goal on the show is to provide you with clarity, elevate your mindset, and equip you with practical strategies and inspiration. I'm Chanie, a proud mother of four, a former New Yorker, now savoring sunny Florida vibes. With a professional journey spanning 18 years across all levels of school leadership, I bring nuanced insight that delve into the intricate details of running a center, as well as the broader visionary aspects of leadership. Thank you for joining me for this conversation. Let's build a legacy of excellence together. Hello there. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about how to coach staff when they're in a state of helplessness. So before we can even talk about how to coach staff when they're in a state of helplessness, I want to talk about how some of the things that happen that get staff to that place of helplessness in the first place. Because teaching staff can experience a lot of different feelings of helplessness due to a lot of different factors. So one of the biggest factors that kind of brings people into a state of helplessness is a high workload. So teachers often face very heavy workloads with a lot of responsibilities, including lesson planning and classroom management and parent meetings and children and all the things. And an overwhelming workload can really lead to a feeling of helplessness, especially with teachers that feel unable to keep up with all their work. So helplessness really comes from this place of like, everything is so overwhelming. I can't keep up. I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to catch up. And then they just enter this state of like, well, I just can't do anything. And there's almost this like learned helplessness that comes in where they can't do some basic things where you're like, okay, you should really know how to do this, or you should really be capable enough to do this. And they can't. They really can't. So one of the things that really drives staff into the state of helplessness is a high workload. Another thing that will bring staff into a state of helplessness is student behavior challenges. Dealing with disruptive or challenging student behavior is really draining on teachers. They can feel helpless as they struggle to try to manage the classroom behavior effectively, especially when they're trying all these different strategies and it really fails to improve the situation. And so again, feeling of helplessness begins to take form in their mind. Another contributor to a feeling of helplessness comes from limited autonomy. Teachers can feel very demoralized when they have limited autonomy in decision-making around their specific classroom. So micromanagement or rigid policies really undermine teachers' confidence and their sense of own individual advocacy and agency in their life. And so this limited autonomy really can drive a state of helplessness inside of your staff. So again, this isn't just like teachers. This could be anyone in your direct reports, directors, regionals, assistant directors, office staff, anyone. Another factor that contributes to a feeling of helplessness is a constant change in policy. So rapid changes in policies or curriculum requirements, or just now you're doing it this way and now you change the policy like this and then something happened and it didn't work and now you're starting all over again. Like all this uncertainty is so overwhelming. Like all the changes without adequate support or reasons or resources for why this is happening this way, again, drives a lot of feeling of helplessness. So again, it's not that, oh, I don't want my staff to feel helpless, so I'm never going to change policy. There's nothing inherently wrong with changing policy or making changes or updates to certain things. It's about, is it happening all the time, like consistently? This was the policy and 3 weeks later, this is the policy. Or last year, this was the policy and this year you changed 4 policies. Or like just really thinking about how often and how frequent are policies being changed inside of your center. Another thing that really contributes to feeling of helplessness is lack of recognition. Teachers who feel undervalued or underappreciated for their hard work really experience a lot of delusionment around leadership, which leads to feeling of helplessness because the people in authority and leadership do not recognize them. And so it diminishes a lot of their sense of fulfillment, their motivation, their ambition. And so that can drive feeling of helplessness as well. And the last thing that will contribute to it is personal challenges, right? A lot of teachers are also just experiencing their own health, financial, family challenges. And so these external stressors and these kind of external forces really impact the teacher's ability to perform their own professional duties and cope with just regular job-related challenges that are just part of the job. And so they're, again, are huge contributors to feeling helpless. So the thing about feeling of helplessness is that it's not all lost, right? So just because you have a teacher or a member of your leadership team or someone that's feeling helpless or exhibiting behaviors of helplessness, it doesn't mean that you can't coach them out of it. It doesn't mean that you can't mentor and support them through this journey. So I want to share some strategies that can really support that. So the first thing is about building these trusting relationships. So cultivating these relationships and teaching your staff by actively listening to their concerns, showing empathy, showing genuine care for their well-being. These are just huge in supporting that feeling of helplessness. So we have an owner who is currently working inside of our program. And she opened up a new location and she had hired a new director for that site. And she felt like the director was doing a good job in the beginning, but then slowly started to just kind of fall slack on things that are just not just regular director duties, but things that are really not complicated. And she felt like there was just this feeling of helplessness that the director was displaying around her regular duties. And she was talking to me and she's like, I don't know what to do. How do I, what do I tell her? How do I train her? And I said, take her out for breakfast. I want you to go to one of the breakfast brunch places near you. She's got a ton. She lives right there in the city. Take her out for breakfast, spend time with her, get to know her better, ask her about her life, talk to her about what's going on, like build that relationship with her. And she turned it into like a regular monthly date where she took her out for breakfast once a month. For the first 6 months that she worked inside of that location. The breakfast dates were, she had set the intention was, she's like, this is not about what you're doing in the center, what you're not doing. This is not a performance review. This is not a one-on-one or whatever it is. This is us spending time together and getting to know each other in our own humanity outside of the context of work. And she took her out once a month for breakfast. And she said as she got to know her better and got her to understand who she was as a person, where she was coming from, what was happening inside of her, what was happening in her inner world. First of all, it allowed her to be more empathetic to certain things, but it also allowed her to not be afraid to hold her accountable. So I know sometimes leaders will say things to me like, oh, but I know that they're, going through X, Y, and Z, so I feel bad. Actually knowing what is going on or what's happening for someone can actually make it easier to hold them accountable to certain things because it becomes easier to display empathy with radical accountability. So accountability doesn't mean the absence of kindness or empathy. Accountability is not now I'm a jerk and mean and horrible to my people. No, accountability is done with kind candor and empathy and real just understanding. And it was very interesting because she really thought that as she got closer to her, it would be harder for her to hold her accountable and push her out of this feeling of helplessness. But as she got to know her better and support her and build this trusting relationship, it actually supported her ability to move her out of feeling helpless. Another area to work on when you're coaching a staff member out of a feeling of helplessness is clarity of expectations. So again, like I was saying before, is constant changes in policy and limited autonomy impact a teacher's, staff's feeling of helplessness. And so clarity of expectations, clearly communicating expectations around their responsibilities, the performance standards of your company, their professional development opportunities, all of these components and how this particular role in the company contributes and aligns with the school's goals and mission and vision. All of this together really creates a sense of purpose and direction, and it immediately removes that feeling of helplessness because helplessness is driven by this fact of like, I don't have purpose, I don't have direction, I don't have meaning in my life, I don't know what I'm doing. And, everything is just so overwhelming. And so when you can anchor the person in that, which comes from a clarity of expectation, a clarity of their role, you remove the feeling of helplessness. Now you've empowered the person. How else can you coach a staff member through a feeling of helplessness? So another area to look at is offering professional development opportunities. So professional development that is tailored to this particular staff member's needs and interests. Please do not send someone to a conference or sign them up for a training because you're like, oh, they're feeling helpless. Bam, let's send them to this conference in the middle of nowhere where there's lots of other teachers and it'll be great for her and, she'll get to collaborate with everyone. If she is massively introverted and is probably going to stay in her hotel room half the time, and even if she comes to one of the seminars, she'll probably sit in the back and exit the second the session's over, you're not helping the needs that she actually has, which is she needs to build relationships with other people, right? We have to understand the individual needs and interests of our staff before we offer professional development. But professional development shows the teacher that you're invested in them. And again, when someone feels like they matter and they are valued and they're respected, which is when you invest in them, their feeling of helplessness starts to, disappear. How else do you help teachers move through feelings of helplessness? Celebrating successes. So creating the definition of success for this particular teacher in this season and acknowledging their hard work, their dedication, their achievements, whether that's publicly or privately, depending on how they want to be acknowledged. Again, we have this as part of our gratitude matrix and our teacher's language of appreciation. This is something that we teach our clients to do when they first join the Schools of Excellence membership. We walk them through how to define success with a particular teacher, and then also walking them through understanding what this teacher's language of appreciation is, so that when they need to be appreciated and when you want to celebrate success with them, you're actually doing it in a way that feels good for them. Celebrating successes reinforces ownership and pride in a teacher's work. When you feel ownership and pride, you are not going to feel helpless. Lastly, model ownership, right? So leading by example, by demonstrating ownership and accountability in your role as a leader and showing your commitment, taking responsibility for your actions, for your decisions, and demonstrating your willingness to learn and grow. Like, this is how you inspire staff to take ownership of their own professional practices and contribute to the school. It was really interesting. I had a couple of owners who were struggling with a few of their leaders who were demonstrating, it wasn't so much of a lack of helplessness, but it was more just a brick wall around just being more vulnerable and more honest. And they just couldn't get through to them. And the owners kept coming on to calls with me and messaging me like, how do I do this? How do I help them? How do I support them? And every single time I would tell them the same thing. I'm like, you need to model this. I know you want your team to be more vulnerable and share more and not show this level of like helplessness, but you're demonstrating that, right? You are not showing a level of vulnerability with your team. And kind of only showing your team the highlight reels. How are they supposed to be able to connect with you? Because you're almost above human, because you're not sharing any mistakes or things that fall apart for you, or something that's hard for you, or something that you navigated. And the people want to connect to the humanity in us. And part of our shared humanity is that we make mistakes because we're flawed humans. And that helps people connect to, wow, you're such a real person. What makes a real person, right? Is it the fact that they are moving and breathing and their hands are moving and their eyes are moving and they can walk and talk? And like, is that what makes a quote unquote real person? Or is when people say you're a real person is, wow, I saw part of myself in you, right? I saw your humanity, which means I saw that you are flawed. And I also saw that you can have a real pulse and are in touch with the realities of the ground here. And so when we're talking about working with staff that are feeling helpless or in certain areas, it's recognizing our own humanity in that we also have areas in our life where we can feel helpless. And so even though you're looking at this teacher and you're thinking, my gosh, why do you feel helpless in a situation like this? It's so simple. Again, humanity, empathy, kind candor. There are areas in your life right now where if someone would ask you to do something, you would feel so helpless in that arena. And channel that feeling when you're like, that's what it means to model ownership. Like, channel that feeling when you're having that conversation and understanding how difficult it is for this person. And it doesn't mean that they cannot be taught it, and it doesn't mean they cannot move through it, and it doesn't mean you cannot coach them through it. But have the empathy and the grace as you help them navigate these challenges. So I want to invite you to look at your teacher roster or look at your direct reports or whatever it is. And I want you to pick one or two people that you want to have a new conversation with them about pushing them to the next level, about elevating them out of their state of helplessness. Pick one or two people, whether if you're driving or, doing something else right now, maybe pause, come back to this podcast episode when you can look at your teacher roster or your, leadership team's roster and pick one or two people and say, this is the area that I want to directly coach them and mentor them and move them through this state of helplessness. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I would love to do that. I need help having that conversation. I'm not sure where to begin. I'm not sure how to, even what to talk about. I'm not sure, there's so many areas where they feel helpless. Where do I start? This is what coaching and mentoring is about. This is what we do inside of the Schools of Excellence membership. This is how I support the leaders. This is how our success coaches and our team of students really support our clients. This is what we specialize in coaching and navigating through these difficult kinds of conversations and coaching and mentoring your leadership teams. So if you're hearing this might be the sign for you to apply. Click the link in the show notes, and I'd love to have a conversation with you if it's a good fit. All right, thanks so much for joining us. If you are loving the Schools of Excellence podcast and have gotten any value out of it for your school, I would love if you can do two things for me. One, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And two, can you please leave us a review? Reviews help other school leaders know that this is the place to learn how to build a school of excellence. And I would be so grateful if you can do that for us. Your help and support makes this show to be able to be listened by the thousands of other school leaders all around the world. Thanks so much for listening, for giving us your time and attention each and every week, and I appreciate that you have joined us.